Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're opening a case file that is absolutely going to give you chills. I honestly can't wait to share this one with you, because it perfectly blends the terrifying elements of supernatural horror with the dark, calculated reality of a true crime conspiracy. We're going to look at the haunting of a young woman named Sarika. But as we navigate through this case, you'll quickly discover that absolutely nothing is exactly what it seems to be.
So let's dive right in. What actually happens when a tragic accident is, in reality, a calculated murder? Keep that question in the back of your mind as we go through this explainer. The ghost story we're about to explore, with all its terrifying supernatural elements, is actually built on a foundation of cold-blooded deception and human greed. The paranormal activity here isn't just random, it's highly targeted.
Sarika's mother, Sarla, once described her daughter with this quote: "She takes everyone's sorrow into her heart." Early on in our story, Sarika is painted as this highly empathetic, deeply emotional young woman who's completely traumatized by witnessing a horrific event. But I want you to remember this quote, because later on, we're going to uncover a really dark irony regarding Sarika's supposed empathy and absolute innocence.
All right, part 1. The horrific accident. Picture this: February 25th, right near Sarika's office, a guy named Naman is brutally hit by a truck. It's a horrific scene. He's actually impaled in the chest by a motorcycle handle. Sarika, who happens to have a background in nursing, rushes right to the scene. She desperately uses a cloth to apply pressure to his severe wounds, trying her best to stop the bleeding. But because of heavy traffic, the ambulance is delayed. Tragically, Naman dies right there on the road, practically in Sarika's arms. When she gets home, she seems completely shattered, deeply traumatized by her inability to save his life.
Right after the accident, Sarika starts getting these killer headaches. She's exhausted and complains that her body feels insanely heavy. Now, in a lot of cultures, these sudden physical and behavioral shifts are chalked up to Neza, or the evil eye. Her mom, Sarla, completely brushes off the medical or psychological trauma. She assumes Sarika caught the evil eye just because she went out with her hair open and wearing perfume. So Sarla tries this traditional cleansing ritual using burning chili and loban smoke. But weirdly enough, the chili produces absolutely no smoke. That's a massive red flag in these cultural beliefs. But the family just kind of tries to brush it off and move on.
Which brings us to part 2, the onset of demonic possession.
Things spiral out of control fast. Day 1, it's just the headaches, but by day 2, she's got these deep dark circles, locks herself in her room, and her mom catches her staring and smiling completely blankly at the walls. Day 3 is when the dam breaks. Her boyfriend Rohan calls her up, aggressively demanding that they get married after 3 years of dating. Sarika hangs up in a rage, and this emotional spike triggers something absolutely terrifying. A tall, dark figure appears in her room. The temperature just drops. The very next day, she hears a demonic whisper right in her ears saying, "I will never leave you." And as she tries to run and tell her mom, the ceiling fan in her bedroom crashes to the floor with a deafening bang.
There's this terrifying disconnect in how the characters are perceiving what's going on. When Rohan comes over with his family to officially propose, he thinks he's just visiting his weak, sick fiancée who needs some rest. The reality? He is literally walking into the den of a possessed, vengeful entity. During the visit, Sarika intentionally spills boiling hot tea right onto Rohan. Later, when he goes to clean up in her bedroom, he catches her staring coldly into a mirror, acting completely unlike herself. He tries to touch her hair, and her reaction is chilling. She snaps her neck at an entirely unnatural, horrifying angle.
And this leads right into a major escalation. Up in that bedroom, with her neck twisted, Sarika lunges and violently chokes Rohan with unnatural strength. In absolute terror, he shoves her away. She hits her head on the bedpost and has to be rushed to the hospital. Now, Rohan lies to the family, saying she just fell. But when he goes into her hospital room alone to check on her, she suddenly grabs his wrist, her eyes snap open, and her pupils are pure, milky white. With a dead, demonic smile, she whispers to him, "This is just the beginning. Revenge is left." Rohan sprints out of the room, finally realizing that the woman in that bed is for sure not his fiancée anymore.
Moving on to part 3, failed attempts at rescue.
It's like every single spiritual defense methodically fails. We already know step 1 failed. For step 2, Sarika's brother Gautam gets a protective thread Araksha Sutra from a priest, but he mysteriously drops it out of his pocket at a shop before he can even bring it home. Step 3 is probably the most alarming. The temple priest agrees to come to the house, but the very next morning he's found suddenly paralyzed, completely immobilized out of nowhere. Behind closed doors, the possessed Sarika is gloating, smiling this satanic smile, knowing she blocked him.
And finally, step 4. When her mom gives her a protective iron nail on her wedding day, Sarika just secretly kicks it under the bed. The entity is literally always one step ahead.
All right, part 4, the night of the doomed wedding.
So, Rohan's mom actually bumped the wedding up to just 15 days away, basically sealing their fate. And the details of this wedding are wild. Before walking down the aisle, Sarika takes that unwashed kurta, the one stained with the dead man Naman's blood from the accident, cuts pieces of it, and ties them right into her bridal outfit. She is actively binding the ghost to herself. As they take their wedding vows around the fire, a dark shadow walks right alongside them, binding its vengeance to their marriage. But get this, the most insane detail? On their wedding night, Sarika brings Rohan a glass of poisoned milk, but right before he drinks it, his mom bursts in. A dead lizard had randomly fallen into the milk pot in the kitchen. That totally random, bizarre accident inadvertently saves Rohan from being murdered on his wedding night.
Now here is where things get completely crazy. Part 5, unveiling the terrifying truth.
Because we really got to ask a huge question right now. Was Naman's spirit just going after random victims? Prepare yourselves, because we are about to completely shatter the idea that Sarika is just some innocent bystander who accidentally brought a ghost home. Later on that wedding night, the entity totally corners the terrified Rohan, and it drops the act. The ghost reveals its true identity. It's Naman. Through Sarika's voice, Naman says, 25th February, a staged hit and run so my shares transfer to you. Boom! Naman's death wasn't a tragic accident. It was a calculated assassination.
This whole thing was a premeditated murder plot put together by Rohan. Picture him, sitting in his study, sipping whiskey, making a phone call. Step 1, target Naman on his regular commute on February 25th. Step 2, make sure the streetlights on that specific dark curve were out. Step 3, he paid double to a hitman driving a truck to ensure a fatal, high-speed collision that would look exactly like a tragic brake failure accident. And why? Strictly for business. Rohan wanted Naman dead so that all of Naman's lucrative business shares would automatically transfer to him.
And this reveals the absolute darkest truth of our explainer today. Rohan was the mastermind, driven by pure greed for those shares. Naman was the betrayed friend, murdered for profit. But what about Sarika? Man, she wasn't a traumatized empath at all. She was a willing co-conspirator. She knew about the assassination plot all along. She deliberately went to the accident scene that night, using her nursing background to put on a fake crying performance, pretending to save him solely to make sure no one would suspect foul play. Her trauma, her empathy, it was all an act.
Which brings us to our final chapter, Part 6, the horrific consequences of greed.
The final act of vengeance here is just brutal. As Naxaman was bleeding out on the street, he looked up and realized he'd been betrayed. He literally saw Sarika faking her tears. So, in his dying moments, his soul latched onto her, possessing his own murderer's accomplice to execute his direct revenge. On their wedding night, using Sarika's body, Naxaman's spirit attacks Rohan. She viciously smashes Rohan's head into the bedroom wall until he's dead, and then throws his lifeless body right out the window. But the ghost isn't done. Having used Sarika to kill the mastermind, the entity forces Sarika to pick up a knife, cut her own throat, and jump out the very same window to her death. A complete murder-suicide orchestrated directly from beyond the grave.
And that wraps up this case file, but I want to leave you with a final, pretty provocative thought. Who is the real monster here? Is it the terrifying ghost, seeking bloody justice from beyond the grave? Or is it the humans, driven by such cold, calculated greed that they would slaughter their own friend just for business shares? It really makes you ponder the terrifying darkness of human nature and the inescapable reach of karma. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this breakdown was as fascinating for you as it was for me.